With the world, and particularly farming, going through a pretty rough time thanks to problems in the supply chain as well as the rising cost of living, there doesn't seem to be any let-up on the horizon. And now, we have a looming wheat crisis on the way. Today, we are discussing how the Argentinian farmers are struggling thanks to the global wheat shortage. So, stay right where you are. Let's jump straight in then. What's going on? Argentina is a bit of a mess at the moment. The economy is struggling and the peso is possibly the weakest it's ever been. Add to this other problems such as the rising cost of fertilizer, unusually dry weather, and export rules. Then this all means that some farmers are beginning to abandon one of their staple crops, wheat. Some farmers have chosen to focus on other crops, such as soybean, but this impact is being felt around the world since South America is one of the biggest players in the global wheat game. Given the fact that wheat prices have increased since the beginning of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, Argentina's perceived withdrawal from the market is being felt. Russia and Ukraine are two of the biggest wheat producers around the world, so prices have increased steadily since wheat production dropped in the area. So the last thing the market needs is for another major player to down tools. However, one Argentinian farmer, Juan Francisco Arregui, has explained that Argentinian farmers cannot hang around waiting for the rains that are seemingly not going to come. He also explained that wheat production is complicated. There is enough water to plant the seeds, but if the rains don't come, then the wheat crop is not sure by any means. All of this means that farmers are beginning to move towards crops that need less water, unfortunately for the wheat market. What do you guys make of this? So, what else do we know about the situation? Well, last season was huge for Argentina, with the wheat harvest weighing in at around 22.4 metric tons when all was said and done. And given all of this, plus the invasion of Ukraine, suppliers were hoping Argentina could plug the pretty big gap left by Putin's unethical invasion. However, this will all be wishful thinking if the weather doesn't start to improve and offer some relief in the form of rain that is sorely missing at the moment. Buenos Aires and Rosario, two northern cities central to the grain market, where the main grain exchanges are based, have predicted that wheat planting will continue to decrease if the weather doesn't start to play ball. And Christian Russo, an expert in the science of soil management and crop production in Rosario's grain exchange, has suggested that the best the country can hope for in regards to the output from the next harvest is around 18.5 million metric tons. This may sound a lot, but when compared to last season's haul, it's way off. He said, "Today, anything that goes wrong with wheat is more important and means greater losses." Given the current rain crisis, the exchange has warned the global wheat market to expect much less output this season, thanks to the conditions being some of the worst in more than a decade. Grain planting is thought to be at around 65% of normal conditions, with many fields around the country left unplanted. Oh dear, give us your solutions below. We're talking politics and fertilizers next. Stay with us. Well, wheat production isn't the only thing that's been affected by the Ukraine crisis, as Russia is a huge supplier of fertilizer for global farming. Sanctions against the Russians, plus Putin spitting his dummy out and cutting off supply in response to the world having the sheer audacity to sanction him, means that there is a serious lack of fertilizer all across the industry. Farmers all throughout the Americas have been affected, and fertilizer producers in other regions are cashing in. Arregui explained that before the current crisis, he was paying $700 for a metric ton of phosphate fertilizer. Now, he is paying $1,600 for the same amount, which clearly isn't sustainable. Urea has also more than doubled in price and is now around $1,100 per metric ton. This has meant many farmers are beginning to move away from wheat to soy, which requires less of everything, water and fertilizer. The government, who is battling national inflation, which currently is around 60%, have raised export taxes for oil and soy meal, and farmers are worried wheat is next. However, it is thought politicians in the country see this as a last resort. Arregui went on to say, "Here you go to bed on a Sunday, and on a Monday you don't know what news you're going to find," referring to government policy. He went on to explain that every day they are making decisions that could hugely impact the market, which means uncertainty where planning is concerned, saying, "It really costs you a lot every day." Sounds brutal. Next up, news of a 24-hour farming strike. Amidst rising taxes, distaste with the government, and currency controls, farming groups in Argentina have taken to strike action in protest. They spent Wednesday, July 13th, protesting, with the intended outcome of bringing a halt to the grain and livestock markets. However, transport and shipping of grain was not affected, as this strike was thought to be on a more local level. Carlos Echitoni, president of the Argentine Agrarian Federation, who were involved in calling the strike, said, "We suffer from the lack of fuel and the impossibility of buying supplies due to restrictions on dollars. This is combined with tax pressure and lack of financing." Weeks of protests from truckers thanks to rising fuel prices culminated in the strike, but there was no obvious disruption, strangely, as trucks entering the port in Rosario were down by just 60 on Wednesday from 4,073 on Tuesday. This suggests that some truckers possibly crossed the picket line, and one government minister, Juan Manzur, has suggested they need to begin a dialogue with the farming sector in one of the more obvious statements of the year. There's a new sheriff in town. Stay tuned. In a bid to improve their economy, the Argentine government has appointed a new economy minister to replace the outgoing Martin Guzman. Silvina Batakis, an economist and politician, has been tasked with turning the country's economy around, but that will take some doing. Guzman had led talks earlier this year which were aimed at restructuring Argentina's sizable debt with the IMF, which actually won approval in Congress, but the knock-on effect simply increased tensions throughout a government already stretched by the economic crisis, and his position became untenable. The writing was on the wall for Guzman after Vice President Cristina Kirchner questioned the legality of the loan which was taken out under the leadership of former President Mauricio Macri. Batakis takes office amidst a crisis which has seen the official exchange rate plummet to 133 pesos to the dollar. This is in stark contrast with the street rate, known as the blue dollar, which is around 268 pesos. Many people simply choose to send money to themselves via services like Western Union to make sure they get the higher rate. During her first TV interview, Batakis said, "The blue exchange rate is very marginal, but unfortunately, it is the collective consciousness of all of us. You have to understand that the market are people who think, play, and speculate like any other. She will have a big job on her hands if she expects people to not use the blue dollar in a failing economy. What do you guys think?" And finally, Batakis has this week promised order and balance. Stick around. Batakis has recently completed her first week on the job and is pretty bullish about the chances of sorting out the mess that is the Argentine economy. She promised to restore order and balance, but that hasn't done much to reassure investors who are worried about another debt default, which could force inflation to increase yet again. Batakis' appointment was met with market turmoil as investors were unsure of what her appointment would mean for an already teetering economy in one of its most fragile ever states. She promised the country was not going to spend more than we have this week in addressing the country for the first time. She went on to say of the IMF deal, "It is an agreement we signed as a state and we must comply," suggesting she was going to carry on with Guzman's plans of cutting energy subsidies and attempting to implement interest rates that are positive when adjusted for the insane inflation the country is currently seeing. Batakis' appointment has been met with positivity in Washington, and the IMF's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, says her relationship with Batakis seemed to get off on the right foot after a very good first call with the newly installed economy minister. However this plays out, there's one thing that's clear for all to see. Argentina's economy is a mess, and as such, people currently have no idea what the correct prices are for anything. Have you been to Argentina? As always, thanks for dropping by today, and remember to tune in again next time when we will be discussing all sorts of interesting bits and pieces. And why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video, whilst also subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on any more great content in the future. Bye guys!